Your infield is either a two-layer or single-layer profile. What's the difference? The two-layer profile has a thin layer of top dressing or granular material that sits on top of the infield soil. Typically, it is a quarter or half-inch deep. A single-layer profile is made from just one material. Typically, it is just the 4 to 6 inch layer of infield soil. But sometimes, instead of actual soil, your facility may use brick dust, ground limestone, stone dust, or some other product. With two-layer infields, it is important to avoid disturbing the soil below the top dressing. But the single-layer infields will present more challenges. In either case, you'll need to manage the top half-inch daily. During the game, players' cleats will leave marks all over the infield. That's where nail dragging comes in. The purpose of nail dragging is to remove those cleat marks and other imperfections. Make sure your nail drag is set to go about a quarter or half-inch deep. Most cleats are about 3/8 inches long, so you only want to scarify to the depth that cleats go, affecting only that top half-inch or so. When you're nail dragging, you'll need to go over the infield twice. The second time around is to cross-cut in a pattern perpendicular to the first. Cross-cutting helps prevent ripples from forming, giving you a consistently smooth playing surface.
Okay, so what I'm showing you here now is the bottom side of a baseball cleat, a metal baseball cleat, just to show you the depth that these metal cleats will get. And this particular cleat here is just a little bit longer than 3/8 of an inch, and it's a fairly new cleat, so there's not a lot of wear on it. And this is an important thing to know. If we know that baseball cleats usually run around 3/8 of an inch deep, then that tells us the maximum depth that we want to nail drag that infield. If we go deeper than that, we're going to cost traction to the player. He's not going to be able to get a really good grip on the infield when he's running because you've loosened it too deep. So we want to maintain our nail dragging no deeper than a quarter to a half inch. Same thing if we're going to maintain a top dressing on this infield. We don't want the top dressing going any deeper than that level either because, again, he's got to be able to get into some of that firm soil that's beneath that top dressing in order to get his traction. So if we go deeper than, say, a quarter to a half inch, then he's got too much loose material on the surface and he's not going to get the traction he needs. Consequently, he might pull a hamstring, have some ankle injuries, or some other type of leg injuries. So the depth that you nail drag and the depth that you maintain your top dressing, you have to maintain typically a quarter to a half inch depth and no deeper than that, because otherwise that traction suffers. Now I stopped for a minute while we're nail dragging here because I want to show that if this is my first pass over, and you'll notice here that it's not very deep. We're only going in here maybe quarter of an inch. Now, I'm going in one direction right now, and the other thing I want to do is come in here then and cross-cut in the opposite direction at 90-degree angles. We do this to make sure that we get a nice, smooth infield. If I just nail drag in one direction at all times, every time I come out here, over the course of time, at some point, the infield's probably going to get a little wavy. But by cross-cutting, we eliminate those waves from ever forming, and we always keep this infield nice and smooth. The same thing happens when you come out to float drag to finish it off afterwards. You always do the same thing. You always cross-cut all the time with the float drag, and the reason that's done is to keep that infield nice and smooth.
On a totally skinned infield without infield grass, you should vary your dragging patterns. To alternate how you drag, envision the face of a clock. If yesterday you began dragging at 7 o'clock and finished at 1 o'clock, then today you should drag from 3 to 9. Your cross-cutting would be from 6 to 9. By alternating your patterns and cross-cutting, you ensure a smooth infield surface. For regulation fields that include infield grass, your best bet is to handle the tighter areas along the baselines and home plate with a hand scarifying drag. You'll still need to be careful when turning tight radiuses. It's easy to dig in too deep with your nail drag. After you work straight up and down the baselines, come back over them by shimmying back and forth as you go to get a cross-cutting effect.
Now, not everybody's going to have the advantage of having water supply on the fields that they're working on, but if you do, and you have to come out and you have to nail drag this field and it's dried up a little bit, like this first base side of my infield has over here, then go ahead and put some water on it. It's going to make that nail drag much more efficient, going to allow it to penetrate into that soil better. Remember, we don't want to put a lot out here. We don't want it sloppy. We just want to put enough to allow that those nails to better penetrate. So I'm just going to go out here and put some water on. Let it sit a few minutes, and then we'll be able to come out here and nail drag it.
A little moisture will help the nails of your drag sink in just a bit, much more effectively than on a dry infield. Give the infield a moderate watering, but not so much that you create a muddy condition. Then give it a chance to dry a little before scarifying. When you have finished dragging with the tractor, you'll want to use a hand drag, like the X-drag, to get closer to the grass edge in a more controlled fashion. The use of a hand drag near the turf will give you better maneuverability and help you keep material off the edge. When you're done scarifying near the edge with a hand nail drag, come back with a float drag to finish grooming. A cocoa mop will give you about 18 inches from the edge to work with before you finish things up with your tractor's float drags.
All right, so we finished nail dragging with the tractor on the infield skin here. And you'll notice if you look down here, you'll see that we left about, I'd say 6 to 12 inches of the area close up to the grass unscathed. We don't want to take the nail drag too close that's being pulled by the tractor because you don't have as much control as you do using a manually pulled nail drag like the X-drag down here. So we use this along our edges because we have much better control. We're not going so fast. There's not a lot of material being thrown off of it, and we don't have to worry about material getting thrown into the edges and creating lips. So bottom line here is use hand tools to get right along the edges. Try to stay away from bringing your tractor tools right up along the edge here because you've got too much stuff flinging off of it and being thrown off into the edges. All right, before I drag this infield, I want to finish grooming these edges. That way I don't force the person who's driving the implement to drag this infield to get so close to the edge. We want them to stay a little ways out so we prevent any material from getting thrown up into the edges here and creating lips. In this situation, I'm going to use the Cocoa Mop. That'll give us a good 18 inches of buffer area along these edges so that we don't have to worry about bringing that drag mat on the tractor all the way up to the edge here.
We'll talk float dragging in the next section, but it would be a good idea to browse through these slides again before taking a pop quiz regarding scarifying your infield skin.